Chris Watkin here, and I'm with Paul Davies, a man who's handed his notice in on Rightmove and will be leaving them at the end of 2020. Paul, why did you hand your notice in, and why do you think most estate agents are fearful of doing so? Talk to me.
So this came about obviously at the start of the COVID crisis, and I think I've mentioned the story before, but it's when I looked at, I'm on the Optimizer £2,050 a month package, very painful, and obviously looking at a potentially decimated pipeline. So just simply spoke to them and said, look, can I just go back to the basic package until this blows over? Having naively thought that we'd be out of COVID in 2 or 3 months, and the instant response was no. I like to make occasionally rash decisions, and I immediately handed my notice in. Unfortunately, I tied into a contract to the 1st of January. Well, actually, it's the 1st of December, but for some reason, the way their contract works, that means it's a month later. So it's the 1st of January next year. So, yeah, and it was sort of from talking to other agents and this sort of the groundswell of opinion that of a lot of agents have been sort of fed up with.
Okay, so you handed your notice in, which is brave of you, well done. But what do you think is holding other agents back from doing the same? Because, I mean, there was this huge groundswell with the Say No to Rightmove campaign. Thousands of agents signed up, and then all of a sudden the market came back and everyone went, oh, sod this, we've got hay to make. Rightly so.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think if we look at the transition of the sort of period, sort of immediately COVID, everyone was fearful for their business, seeing this huge expense. And Rightmove, they really called it wrong about how they responded to agents, and that sort of brought out a lot of frustration.
Do you think if they'd come out with the 75%, then they could have actually done themselves more good than harm?
Yeah, absolutely. I think because their initial response was, no, we're not going to help you, then, oh, actually, we'll give you £100 discount deferred for 3 months. So it's not really a discount or whatever it was. But, it's ridiculous. And I think that's the thing. If no one wants, when you're the customer of somebody and you're sort of facing the abyss, no one wants to, them to go, no, we're not going to help. And I think that's the thing is if they'd have turned around and said, like, right, we're here, what's happening, we're going to help, we make close to 80% profit margins, so we're just going to take the sting out of the next few months and help you guys. I don't think there'd have been any of this sentiment.
Now, before we get back to the main question, which is why agents are fearful of leaving, you mentioned in the previous video that you, along with Rob Sargent, Murray, and also David from Nottingham, were about being bounced back and not getting much conversation from Rightmove. Do you think that there is institutional lack of empathy?
Yes. Having said, the interactions and a lot of the gripe was not just the fees, but when I speak to a lot of people in my group, is like actually how they talk and condescend to us, or did at the time. And one of the things I've actually noticed since is, I don't know whether there's been a structural change within there, but actually when I've had conversations with people within Rightmove, they've been a lot more cordial actually. So, hopefully they've kind of listened to something there. But I think pre-COVID, some of the conversations where, they're telling you how to run your business, basically.
I mean, I've heard some stories pre-COVID that local account managers were coming up and saying, when they handed the notice in, well, you need more us than we need you. So when you come back, you will come back, sod you, and you'll be charged full whack and whatever price we want to tell you, allegedly.
Yeah, and of course allegedly, but I wouldn't be surprised because they know they've got the market dominance, and I think that's the concern for the industry. I think when you let your supplier completely dominate you, then you have no bargaining chips, and I think that's one of the things that a lot of us independents have sort of realised for a long time.
But what's holding agents back? Why aren't they handing their notice in? Is it because they've become so dominant, like an addict, that they feel there's no other option?
Yeah, I think that is an analogy to use, but yes, they're the market leading portal, and the customers don't see any issue with Rightmove. When we straw polled our client customers, no one had a negative thing to say about Rightmove, and in fact, actually, everyone pretty much saw it positively. So that's kind of like actually something that needs.
Okay, so would it be fair to say that estate agents are more fearful of not being on Rightmove because what their competitors will say about them.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, but you've handed your notice in. That takes some balls.
Yep.
What are you going to say?
Well, again, so at the time, I looked at what are my alternatives. So we put together and built a social media targeted marketing campaign, which has been working really, really well for us. And I would certainly encourage anyone to investigate that as an option for their business. And then what we're doing is building data to show sort of exactly what results this is producing and why we feel this is going to help people get their property sold. You know, I still get excited by old-fashioned estate agency, which is creating demand for the property, ringing out,
creating a market. We put it on the market, but we don't create a market, do we?
exactly, that's it. It's like, you know, speaking to people like before the property's even, you know, done the photos, got them in there, sold it for over asking price, and that you know that gives me that buzz still. And I think that's a great thing about social media targeted marketing. It links in more with proper estate agency, I feel.
So it would be fair to say that anyone who's considering leaving Rightmove or any of the portals is not to leave, but to have is to have a plan that they can implement even whilst they're with Rightmove, implement it, make sure it works even better than Rightmove, so when they do leave Rightmove or any other portal, they can actually tell a story that, hey, everyone else is on Rightmove, but here's a better.
Absolutely. Yeah, you need a strategy and you need to work on it now because it's not going to happen overnight. So we've been working on this strategy literally since, well, April, and the results, you know, have been fantastic. We've grown market share, we've grown fees, we've increased our
Are you
sales.
still with Rightmove though?
We are still with Rightmove, and that's one of the things as well. So that's, you know, I have to be completely blunt and sort of reflect. It's like, how much is it because of the extra we've invested in the social media marketing as opposed to not being on Rightmove or being on Rightmove? And that's something that we absolutely have to analyse and then very much prove come the 1st of January.
What would your final message be to the senior management of Rightmove?
Final message. God, that's a tricky one. So I think the key thing would be is just, I think, listen to some of the sort of the independent agents. We certainly do sort of make up the vast majority of the profit margin. I do totally get that it's a public limited company, so their onus is to look after their shareholders. But I think the thing is there's only so much that you can push your customers until they're desperate for an alternative. We were obviously really hoping the challenger portals would come and save us, but you know they need a lot more investment. There's one coming that looks like it's, you know, got the investment booming. I'd very much encourage everyone to have a look on that, because I think that could potentially.
I know you've signed an NDA, so you can't say anything at the moment. But did it excite you?
It did, yeah, absolutely. And I think that could be a game changer. Like some of the challenger portals have got some fantastic technology, but you know, the reality is they've not had the bucks behind them. I think could be potentially a good combination of the two. As much as we're trying to support the challenger portals like Open Bricks, One Dome, Residential People, and Home Search as well, amongst others.
And my message to the powers that be at Rightmove is start talking to people in the industry. When journalists from all the big publications ring me up to ask them what's happening, you think, God forbid, they're in their ivory towers. It's absolutely scary. I'll give them their due. There's one or two of them there that will talk, but I just wish they would just listen more and show more of an empathetic side as opposed to being a grey man. But anyway, I've said my piece. Thank you for your time today, Paul, and thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for watching.
Thank you.